Okay, like say testing, testing.
Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like we're having a communications problem. Mr. John, okay, can you hear me? Mr. John, okay, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, Mr. T, I can hear you. I don't know why John is not speaking.
Thank you very much, Ellis. I don't know why John is not hearing. John, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, Mr. Chu.
Okay, great. Uh, it looks like we're having maybe a network issue or so from Mr. John Oke's end. Uh, while we wait, let's see if he can rectify it before we continue. Otherwise, we might go straight into it while he tries to address that as well.
Look at this. Yeah, Prof is online now.
Okay, Michael.
Okay, you're muted. Hmm?
You're unmuted. Say something.
Hello. Yeah, Prof, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Obi, we can hear Prof very well now. Thank you.
They know you do.
Okay. At this point, I think we're just waiting for.
I think Mr. John Oke has issues with his network. He's trying to log back in. Mr. John, you can unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, yeah.
Yeah, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about the technical hitch that is making us start late. First of all, I want to thank everybody who were able to log in at the scheduled time. It's not always very easy for events like this not to have Nigerian factor. So you're all welcome to the 50th birthday anniversary colloquium of our brother and friend, Mr. Nnoli. This colloquium goes on or sets out to litigate a very important subject matter in Nigeria today. And given that Mr. Nnoli is a public intellectual, this is his contribution to the national debate on both citizenship and the question of nation building, without building consensus, without ensuring that we all work together to build the nation Nigeria, we will not be able to make progress. There will be no development. There will be stunted healthcare services. Even our democracy, which as it stands today is on shaky grounds, cannot be strengthened unless we pull our hands together to build the nation. Before we take off, I want to introduce the MC of the day who will pilot our affairs. Mr. Tio, are you there? Hello? Can you hear me? Mr. Tio
Mr.
Osawe.
Tio, you can mute yourself, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, Tio, can you hear me?
Let me unmute him.
Ellis, you can unmute him.
Yeah,
All right, thank you very much. I can hear you very well, Mr. John, okay?
So let me use this opportunity to welcome you again, and then you're going to pilot the affairs of this evening. So can we take off from here? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. John. Okay, I really appreciate the time you've taken. Like you said, we do have some technical glitches in events like this. Before we go much further, I want us to please observe a minute of silence in respect of our late father, Mr. Nnoli as well, who passed away sometime last year or so. So please bear with me while we start that. Please let's observe a minute of silence. May the soul of our dear Father Chief Nnoli rest in peace.
Amen.
Thank you very much, everyone, for
Amen.
joining us. At this point, I think I would have loved to introduce the Nigerian national anthem, but unfortunately, again, please bear with me. I do not have the connections to that right now, but most likely at the end of this occasion, we might bring it back on, just so we make this more formal. Having said that, let me quickly introduce you to the purpose why we're here gathered today. The Orazulike Nnoli 50th birthday Colloquium is an event that has actually was intended to expose or to, if you will, demonstrate the interest of the celebrant, to showcase his interest, not just in politics, given his background, but also to showcase his interest in nation building. In light of that, today's theme, titled Nigeria, One Nation, Many Voices, Reaching Critical Consensus for Nation Building, will address the rich diversity and complexity of Nigerians' present considerable challenges in creating a unified national identity. The history of the country, characterized by colonialism, extended military dictatorship, haphazard boundary drawing, and of course, a violent civil war that disrupted its initial republic, has led to the profound ethnic, regional, and religious divisions. That said, the purpose of this colloquium will examine the intricacies of national identity, consensus building, and nation building in Nigeria. The colloquium conversation is even more critical and apt at this very particular point in time that the nation's 26-year journey into democracy has resulted in entrenched underdevelopment and disillusionment, highlighting the need for alternative nation building paradigms, particularly now that we're beginning to observe new political alliances as well as coalitions. While we commemorate the 50th anniversary of Mr. Orazulike Nnoli, this colloquium aims to speak to the following objectives. One, to examine the historical and contemporary challenges to Nigeria's national identity and unity, including the legacy of the Civil War and prolonged military rule, to identify strategies of promoting national consensus and integration, but also to explore the role of inclusive governance, economic empowerment, and education in fostering national unity. And finally, we shall also explore ideas to leverage Nigerians' diversity as a strength in nation building. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce the panel to you, let me introduce the celebrant, Mr. Orazulike Nnoli, to you. Mr. Orazulike is currently the CEO of Vezula Limited. He's a management system consultant, one who is very strategic in management systems auditing, strategic operations management, service delivery management, business process reengineering, operations process audit, compliance management, operational risk management, fraud control, iOS management system, and of course, development and delivery. More interestingly, he has successfully led organizational restructuring and business systems transformation projects across the globe, including leading consultancy themes to achieve ISO management systems, certificates of various ISO standards, and in the development of risk management, quality management, and corporate governance framework for several multi-sectoral clients. He has led consultancy service for third-party monitoring on the expatriate quota utilization, for the Nigerian content development and monitoring board encompassing the creation of frameworks for compliance management and risk management. He has also played an extended role in developing systems for operator performance management, compliance monitoring processes and procedures, and also very much involved in document control and management systems. If we know Nnoli very, very well, we know that he has also conducted thorough Nigerian content compliance reviews to ensure the adherence of oil industry operators and service companies to the Nigerian oil and gas industry's content development, and other well-established guidelines and regulations regarding the development of the utilization of Nigerian manpower in the oil and gas sector. Mr. Nnoli is a graduate of the Nnamdi Azikiwe University and the University of Liverpool. Is the global president of the Federal Government College. Is a student of history. Is a student of history, politics, and of course, power and governance. Is committed to a socially progressive society, and hence you can see why this topic is very important to him and the planning committee as well. Now, having introduced Mr. Nnoli, I'm going to likely give you, an idea of the panelists that we'll have today. As our key guest speaker, our special keynote speaker today is Professor Okudiba Nnoli. Professor Okudiba Nnoli holds a PhD in political science from Stanford University in the United States. His doctoral thesis was on economic decolonization and interstate relations in Africa from 1960 to 1966. Dr. Nnoli has taught at the University of Chicago, USA, as well as in Dar es Salaam University in Tanzania. He's currently a professor at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He dropped his English name, Albert, in protest to the role of the British in the Nigerian Civil War. He contributed as a student or as a scholar to the Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, pioneered the Pan-African Center for Research on Peace and Conflict Resolution. He has also authored Ethnic Politics in Nigeria, first published in 1978, and which was or has been cited over 4,500 times across the world for the insight he provides to identity politics in Nigeria. His other publications include Introduction to Politics, published in 2003, National Security in Africa. Professor Nnoli detests the state with passion and its general orientation that shows self-service or self-preservation at the expense of catering to the needs of all the citizens. He rejected offers to serve in government as a result, including the offer to be the pioneer Director General of the National Orientation Agency. He only considered his non-disposition to serve in government when he sat on the board of Tertiary Education Trust Fund. Due to the persistent pressure of Professor Tunde Adeniran, who wanted him to serve on the board of the fund and the agency's alignment with his philosophy around the importance of public sector education and citizen enabler. Professor Okudiba Nnoli now spends his time between Nigeria and the United States of America. Ms. Kate Pam Simek. Kate is a seasoned consultant and a social entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in training, consulting, oil and gas, as well as financial services. She's the CEO of the Stalwart Group and has MBAs in both marketing from Grenoble Graduate School of Business and Global Management from London Metropolitan University. She is a certified international manager, a learning and development specialist, a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultant, a member of the Nigerian Institute of Training and Development, among others. She's a certified John Maxwell Leadership Trainer and Coach with vested interest in Nigerian development. Mr. Kate Henshaw is the Executive Director of We the People, a civil society organization based in the Niger Delta cities of Port Harcourt and Calabar. Over the years, he has said for over 17 years, he has demonstrated experience working closely with communities in the Niger Delta where oil and gas have been extracted for decades with devastating environmental, health, and social consequences. He works with indigenous forest-dependent communities, losing land and livelihood rights due to the UN-supported carbon reduction scheme in Nigeria. His work is focused on ensuring cleanup of decades of environmental pollution, that the rights of indigenous people are respected and protected. Community livelihoods lost to pollution are restored, and the rising effects of climate change are mitigated. Ken keenly monitors the unfolding impacts of climate change and hydrocarbon pollution on communities, particularly with participants actively in the global climate movement space, as well as in the local and international forums on climate change impact. He's passionate about protecting or projecting community voices in global conversations around climate justice and environmental remediation, strengthening community agencies in engaging governance and corporate powers. Mr. Sotoye Rollins Apiafi is a business process expert and an alumni of the Lagos Business School. Oh, sorry, I take that back. Ms. Sotoye Rollins Apiafi is a business process expert and an alumni of the Lagos Business School. She's also an alumni of the School of Politics, Policy, and Governance in Abuja, a Nigerian institution focused on training a new generation of political leaders with strong foundation in values, disruptive thinking, and the skills necessary for effective governance. She emerged as the best graduate student of the class of 2024. She's a lover of Nigeria in the Ubuntu philosophy. Mr. Mohammed Sheyi Gambo, former National Publicity Secretary of Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASI. He is also the global president of the Federal Government College Kaduna Old Student Association, a Pan-Africanist by nature, a nationalist by discipline, and a good governance advocate. And finally, on the panel is Nicholas Okachi, lawyer and foreign investment attorney, a clinical research project manager, who is also currently a global project manager in pharmaceutical research with sustained interest in public affairs and governance with a radical leaning. Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, Mr. Celebrant, Mr. Nnoli, it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to this colloquium that marks your 50th birthday. In light of that, I would like to call on Mr. Nnoli to give us a voice on this journey so far. Getting to the 5th floor has been quite a while, so I'm sure the guests would like to hear, and participants would also like to hear one or two words from Mr. Nnoli. Mr. Nnoli, I hope the mic is open for you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, very well.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and thank you, the moderator. First of all, I want to thank everybody for making our time to be here. And more importantly, my uncle, Professor Okudiba Nnoli, who we had to disrupt his schedule to get him to join us in this event. Thank you so much, Prof. I want to also say that I want to thank God for the journey so far. 50 years is a major milestone in the life of everybody. And I think that at this point, I'm bothered about the situation in Nigeria and the seeming difficulty in aggregating the different voices within the country to ensure national development. And that is why this colloquium is considered apt at this moment. So I'd like to thank God for giving me life, providing for me and sustaining my journey this far. And more importantly, recognize the inputs of my parents, Engineer Robert Nnoli of blessed memory, and Pharmacist Hope Nnoli, who had a critical and impactful influence on my academic and social development up to this point. I also want to recognize my wife, Mrs. Nene Nnoli, for her enduring love over the years, my siblings, Barrister Chika Ekwani, Ngozi Nnoli, Chinyelu Nnoli, and Ifekando Nnoli for their love, and my in-laws, Dr. Obiora Ekwani, Dr. Adako Nnoli, Chief Kelechi Ohiara, and the rest of the Nnoli and the Ohiara families. And also my uncles, Dr. Iwuchukwu Udechukwu and Chief Noroka Udechukwu Noroka, Chief Udechukwu Noroka Udechukwu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. I thank you for your love and sustained support over the years and continued support in all my endeavors. So I want to also, while I recognize and appreciate the presence of everybody here, I want to quickly specially recognize the following people for the roles they've played in my social and leadership development over the years, and the importance I accord to them for the impact they've made in my life generally. So I want to recognize the presence of Chief Lawrence Wilbert, the Agura Tete of Warri Kingdom, the presence of Dr. Joseph Oteri, the NAS Capone of the National Association of Sea Dogs, the presence of Michael Magaji, the President General of USOSA, Mr. Abiola Owaje, Prince Ifeanyi Onochie, Barrister Ato Boje, Barrister Emmanuel Boarabo, Barrister Obinna Onyaro, Mr. Chiemeka Ozumba, Mr. Ese Folami, Dr. Charles Meribole, Mr. Ide Owodiongidemeko, Dr. Osade Azonobo, Mr. Nelson Wilbert, Barrister Leonard Ebie, Barrister Uche Chukwuocho, Mr. Francis Obi, Mr. Nnanna Ude, and all members of the National Executive Council of the National Association of Sea Dogs who are here present, members of the National Executive Council of the Unity Schools Old Students Association, USOSA, who are here present, and members of the National Executive Committee of the Federal Government College, Ugulawo, Old Students Association, who are here present, and also members of the Board of Trustees of the FGC Ugulawo Old Students Association. I will not want to take much of our time, as we have already subject matter experts who will do justice to the topic of the day. So I want to thank all of you once again for being here and yield the floor so that the experts can take over the conversation. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uchenna Nnoli, for that brief voice of yours to start to kick this colloquium off. Having said that, given the theme for today's conversation, Nigeria, one nation, many voices, reaching critical consensus for nation building. The idea for the key discussion is to look at the national identity and unity, issues of national identity and unity, particularly from a historical context, one that currently addresses our contemporary challenges. But more importantly, the goal of this colloquium is to promote national consensus and integration, but also to dive into economic empowerment and education, one that would likely foster strength in nation building. On that goal, or regards to that, I would like to call on the keynote speaker to address the colloquium. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Professor Nnoli to the microphone. Professor Nnoli, do we have you on the microphone?
I can hear you.
Thank you very much, Prof. The mic is now yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. And thank you for participating, as well as all the other members of the panel and all those listening. But before I continue, I would like to say happy birthday to my nephew, and to congratulate him on putting together this colloquium as a way of celebrating his birthday. We know how Nigerians usually celebrate their birthday, and this is quite different. And I think it's an example probably that some others should follow. I understand the topic to be that of welding various primordial groups together in the country. but I'm going to use the concept of ethnicity as something that covers all of them. It covers religious identity, it covers generational identity, that is to say young and old. It covers gender identity. It covers all kinds of identity. The only exception that one can make here is class identity, which is also a factor in national life, but very much underdeveloped because ignored. Now, I will start with a preamble, which is two-pronged. And then I will try to provide some of the basic necessities that one must look at if one is considering this matter of identity. One of them is the colonial factor. Secondly, is the factor of socioeconomic and political insecurity. The third one is the factor of repression and oppression within the society. The fourth one is the role of, well, people say leaders, but I would like to use a technical concept, which is class-based, and that is the petit bourgeois in society. And finally, I would like to look at the role of the socialization process within the society. These, for me, are the basic factors that one must understand if one wants to understand the problem of identity in Nigeria. On the question of preamble, the first preamble I would like to touch is the fact that we have to get out of the trap of journalists who tend to restrict us to the present. The journalists, they have this concept of the news cycle. It's a day or two or three or four, and then the news is over, then start another news. Now, this creates a mentality which gives the impression that what we are faced is present. Nobody looks at the history of these things. And for me, you cannot understand the present without understanding history. One of the consequences of this present time discussion of events is that we forget that we have a lot of data in our history which can explain things. In fact, this is the reason why we have the file. In every society, in every company, everywhere, you have a file. The concept of the file is the concept of history. You keep the files in the present, and then if the present moves on, you keep in the archives. Because the file is the bringing together of the historical process of a society. Most of the problems that we are solving today, and we're trying to solve, have been tried in the past. This is what people don't understand. They give the impression that this is new. Nothing is new in the Nigerian political economy. And because they think it's new, they don't go to history to get the lessons that were applied to similar events, to bear on the present events. Instead, they now want to tell us what is happening in the present in other countries. Usually, our leaders, they cannot make a statement, not even leaders, everybody now. You can make a statement without talking about what is happening in America. Everybody. And it's nauseating. Because what is happening in America has no relationship to what is happening in Nigeria. Only in form, never in content, that you have what is happening in America or in India or in China. No. All these people have built their societies on the basis of the progress of history. They learn their mistakes, they learn their success, and they use this to apply to the solution of current problems. Once you move away from there, you are in a very difficult territory. So that is the first thing. Let us not be caught by this trap of just the present, and then we go to Bangladesh, we go to Indonesia, we go to America, Europe, to try to explain things. And the conclusion is that we can't. We have never been able to explain. Now, the second preamble is the feeling, which I think comes from the first, that the mere existence of ethnic groups, remember I use ethnic for all the other primordial factors, that the mere existence of what people call diversity is problematic. This has never been the situation in the history of Nigeria or in the history of other countries. There is hardly any country in this world that is not diverse, either regionally or ethnically or religiously or in gender or in generation or in region. There is always diversity. So the mere existence of diversity is not a problem. What is problematic has to be found in the context in which these, primordial factors exist. And these contexts change, they're different. The context in Ireland is not the same thing as the context in Ghana. It's not the same thing as the context in Tanzania. It's not the same thing as the context in Nigeria. Even in Nigeria, the context in Yoruba land is not the same thing as the context in Igbo land. There is a different context in every situation. And unless you grapple with this context, you cannot understand the problem. And if you don't understand the problem, you cannot solve it. And this is where, again, we have the journalists are misleading everybody. They think that information is knowledge. Information is not knowledge. It's theory that is knowledge. That somebody has gone to the market says nothing. He has gone to the market. But when he has bought something, or the market is a place for, socialization or a cultural environment, then you're beginning to make an understanding of the market. So information is not knowledge, it's theory. And theory is designed to bring the context, to bring all the factors that are operating in the context to explain, the phenomenon. So this is what I would like to say, that mere existence of ethnic factors, primordial factors, does not necessarily lead, to a problem. In fact, before the British came, people moved from one place to the other and they were accepted. I will take example of Igbo land. The town of Osomala is dominated by Igala. But they speak Igbo now. They migrated from Igala land. They dominate Osomala. The same thing with Onitsha, and Asaba, Washuku, that area. People from Benin came there and became Igbo. Even within Igbo land, the predominant area of Oka, for example, was migrants from, Enugu State, from Obelago Mana. And there is hardly any society in Igbo land that is not a mixture of people. And there was no problem. People came and assimilated because the context at the time was favorable. In fact, one of the strongest value in Igbo land is that if people are running away from problem, it is your responsibility to accept and accommodate them and make them part of you. But that doesn't exist anymore. So you cannot now equate the solution of the problem in the pre-colonial time with how it is now when there is a different context. And people don't know that before 1951, there was very little talk about ethnicity in politics. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who dominated the politics of Lagos, had more followers among Yorubas than he had among Igbos. When he traveled with his party to the North in 1952-3. People came from Sokoto riding donkeys, and different parts of the North to, listen to him. And they contributed, they paid for themselves. Not these days that politicians, swim in money and pay. And part of the money that was paid was used because there was excess. He couldn't use all the money. So part of it was used to go to Britain to lobby for independence. So there wasn't. In Enugu, I was part of although I was in primary school then, of a movement that installed an Hausa man as the mayor of Enugu, Maru Altine. And he defeated Zig's candidate, COC Chedozi. He defeated him. And all over we lived with, Yorubas, some of my best family friends were Bini people. But nobody had any problem. So how and why did this start? Unless you can understand it, you will never be able to solve it. It's not just because people are different. People are different everywhere. But there is a context that creates a problem. And it is this concept that I want to touch. One, the most rooted was the colonial enterprise. The colonial enterprise was not there like the Bini came to Onitsha, and integrated. They didn't come to integrate. They didn't come. They came vicious intent to take over the place and exploit it. That wasn't how people who migrated from Obelago, Mana to Oka, that wasn't their intention. And so they tried to create an environment that favored this domination that they wanted. And one of the important things about this environment they created was that it was not created to bring the people of the country together, but to take resources to their own countries. So the railway, the roads, everything led to the ports from wherever, they are operating. There was none that went from one part of the country to the other. There was no business that they created that came from the north to the east, or from the east to the west, or, it was all to Britain. So you already had, Fissiparous tendencies already, regional enclaves being created, all directed to Britain and non-directed. So there was a structural, socioeconomic system that developed. It was not put together. People didn't meet in positive terms. So that is first. And then they complicated this with a political process of divide and rule, so to say. In order to maintain a longer stay in the country, they had to make sure that there were no united efforts against them. And so, they started playing one side against the other, especially within direct rule. Everybody was made to look like he was separate from the others. Even where there were no institutions that looked like the others, you had to try and create them, the warrant chiefs. So this became a problem. People began to stay separate from others. The kind of movement that was there before the colonialists arrived no longer existed, because they applied the result of their 30 years war in England, that created sovereign states, because the kind of thing we had in pre-colonial, they also had before the 1648 treaty. People could become baron, overlord of somebody in France from England or in Germany. The boundaries were all mixed up. People moved. But after 1648, with the Treaty of Westphalia, it was different. They created small entities now, they're called sovereign states. You couldn't cross this boundary without passport, without this, without that, without that. They tried to do the same thing in Nigeria. So the movement that was, there before they came, that integrated people who moved, no longer existed. It was now difficult for even one Igbo group to move to another Igbo group, because the resident will start asking you where you were, the DO will start asking you, they created problems. So that was the first obstacle. I don't want to go into detail because it's something that can take, a long time to discuss. Then secondly, is the question of the socioeconomic insecurity that they created as a result of their, foreign economic operations. You see, normal colonialism, before the colonialism or the imperialism of finance capital came, was to go to a place, collect the resources that those people are producing by themselves, and then, bring home to the metropole. Now the metropole came and stayed, and instead of developing the economy that they met, they marginalized that economy and created a new one. In fact, in some sense, they even destroyed, like in the north, where the cotton industry was superior to the Liverpool industry or the Lancashire industry. For the British to sell their cotton, they had to destroy the market that existed before they came. So what they did was to create tax. If you cross from Katsina to Sokoto, you have to pay tax if you are carrying cotton. And because of this tax, the market, the price of cotton, the local cotton, was now much higher than the cotton that came from Lancashire. And that destroyed the cotton industry. The same thing with beads and other, industries that existed. So when they just did this, they now set up their own system. But you see, the local people were not conversant with this system. You had to move from the village where you did something different to the cities now where you had to do something different. It was very confusing. And the result was that there was socioeconomic insecurity among people who were now working for the British. And in the absence of any other system, they had to look for people who came from their village or near their village as a way of finding some kind of socioeconomic relationship in the city. So that started, for example, the Igbos before, somebody from Afikpo never met somebody from Udi. Never. It was at the boundaries that people met. So if you came from Afikpo and you come to Enugu and you meet somebody from Udi, he has more linguistic relationship with you than somebody from Europe. So the tendency is to try to form a group with him in order to have a social life, and through that social life to have economic access. So if there is any employment opportunity that emerges in the British system, your social friend who is from Udi will help you. That is how Igbo consciousness emerged. There was no such thing as pan-Igbo consciousness. People began to relate on the basis of the fact that they wanted to be able to solve the problem that the colonialists provided. And in order to do that, they had to look for allies of some sort. And the closest that they got were people who spoke the same language. So now language became a way of uniting a much larger group that never met before. And that has become a factor. It has now been, expanded in various ways. So that's how we began to have, Nnoli Union. People who never met. Nnoli Union was not just Nnoli, it was everybody around that area. Many of them hadn't met even. And then through the Igbo Union, and then, Yoruba, Shekiri Union, Urobo, people who hadn't met before. So that the primordial, the tendency now is to think, if you want to get a job, you look for your person, to help you. And that was all the time reinforcing, this identity. So you cannot solve a problem without solving that problem. I don't think it existed with the Irish. I don't think it existed with the Germans, and the French in Switzerland. I don't think it existed even in Rwanda. So this is concrete in the Nigerian case. So the socio-economic insecurity that existed, helped to create this mentality of primordialism. And then the third one is repression and oppression. Over a period of time, of course, there was the British repression. Everybody was, worrying with that. But as we moved on with independence and our people took over, we started having a new form of repression. That is that people will come because they're big people. They will go to Bashama land, because they're big and powerful corporations like the Savannah Corporation, Sugar Corporation, the Lever Brothers. They go there and they take over people's land without any consultation with the people. They just negotiate an agreement, with the government, and they take the land. Now, when you take a land that people are farming on, it means there is shortage of land. That becomes a problem for farmers who need land. And the consequence in Bashama land, the Mambila Plateau, is that people now started trying to look for land. And in order to look for land, they started to say, these people came, entered here, we gave them land. We want this land back. It became a problem. So you find the Mambila are fighting with the Kaba, they're fighting with the Kaka, they're fighting with the Fulani, they're fighting for land. And you find the same thing in Bashama land. They're fighting with the Hausa for land. And we know the case in Bakalori. So, you had this case. And then you also have the case in the Niger Delta, where people's rivers are being polluted, people's land, no fishing, no. Instead of correcting the issue, the government sided the oil companies. And then started brutalizing the people for asking for help to clean up the place. That's how you had the Ogona movement. You had men, you had all these movements in the Netherlands. And the consequence of this is increased ethnic consciousness. They had to band together. And in the process of banding together, they had to create a consciousness that they were one. And not only that, the government went ahead to create divisions so that when the Ogoni started their movement, they had to get the Andoni to raise issues with the Ogoni. So you had an Andoni-Ogoni, conflict. You have a Ogoni-Kalabare conflict. So you had these conflicts being, sponsored. The same thing that direct government, rascality, if you want to put it, was the reason why the government went into OD and massacred a whole community just because 6 police people were killed. The same thing in Zakibiam, the same thing in Umwechem. Now, the consequence of this massacre is increased consciousness. Well, we found that in the case of the Boko Haram, when their leader was killed, it raised an issue. The same thing. People become more conscious of the fact that they are beleaguered. They are under siege. They create a sense of togetherness. They form a different identity from the people who are, oppressing them. And of course, the civil war is clear that because of the level of atrocities, that were connected, not with the leaders who are struggling for things, but with ordinary people. I mean, if the leaders were killing themselves, that was a different thing. But because of the struggle of the leaders as to who will rule and who will not rule, people, ordinary people in the market and in the farms were being killed. You know, so whereas before, the theory is that if people don't get together, they cannot fight or cooperate. They can't. So for a long time, the people from this place said, I keep using the Igbo because that's where I come from. You know, from the Igbo politician will tell you how others are doing this, how others are doing this. The man in the man in Orif, he had never met an Hausa man. So how can he have a problem with him? He hadn't met him. These were stories. You know, 80% of Nigerians in different corners hadn't met themselves. It was just the leaders. You know, but then when you have this kind of massacre that went to villages, that went, you know, to places, now you bringing the people together in a conflictual manner. It helps to create, you know, an ethnic identity. You know, so repression is something that is important. And then you have the question of the petit bourgeois. The petit bourgeois, if you excuse my technical language, because you know the normal language, sociological language that we inherited in school does not explain, you know, tell you middle class, upper class, lower class that had no character in terms of dynamics. No, but the petit bourgeois are petit bourgeois because they are not bourgeois. You know, they cannot create wealth, and therefore they cannot get their pay from the wealth that they have created. They work in situations where they are marginal to production. Lawyers, academic people, you know, these people in the service industry. They're not the ones who are creating products. It is the workers and the capitalists. Those two. So if you compensated producers on the basis of what they contributed, they will have very little. So for them to get part of the national wealth, they cannot rely on production and the class factor in production. They have to rely on something else. And since they were products of the British, they relied on what the British relied upon. That is manipulating ethnic tendencies and, you know, other primordial tendencies. It was only natural because there was nothing else they could use. If they were capitalists, they would be talking about prices, they would be talking about wages, they would be talking about employment, they would be talking about, you know, detailed issues of how to manage electricity. Detailed, not just saying I can do it, I can do it. You know, because it will be critical to their industry. They will be looking for a way of harnessing the resources of the North and the South. They can create the factories in the North and then have the resources in the South. This unites the two areas. So somebody from the North cannot go against somebody from South because his livelihood comes from there. You know, so they couldn't use production and production relations, you know, for their share of the national cake. So they went on to what the British had created, that is these ethnic primordial factors. And so if it is not religion, it is region, for them it must be primordial. The recent one is youth versus old people. How does that have anything to do with anything? We need issues, detailed program of how to solve a problem. So you can criticize the program, not whether the person is rich. Some of these young people, you see them in SUG, they're doing the same thing as the politicians are doing, which brings me to the later stage. So the petit bourgeois who now dominate the industry, they dominate the academia, they dominate politics, they just dominate because these were the people that the British handed things to. And then when they're talking about the ordinary people, they say they're speaking on their behalf. But that's not the case. When they go to board meetings and they go to National Assembly, they're asking for, PECs. They speak together. They don't speak about the ordinary people. So you have to solve the fact that they're a problem. You can't just say they are the ones now telling us how to solve the problem when they're the problem. They're part of the problem. They cannot tell us how to solve the problem. And finally, there is the fact of all these things have happened. Society must keep moving, and they socialize the young into values that are in existence. And these values in existence are usually determined by the wealthy, the influential, i.e., the petit bourgeois. So when they tell people, oh, diversity is the problem because we are diverse, it's not a problem. They are the problem. They use diversity to promote their own interests. So the process of socialization now has brought people up to believe that this is what is. So you cannot do anything about it without solving that problem. It's in people's mind. They think that, oh, Igbos want to kill the Yorubas want to kill everybody. It's all chaos of ethnic, so all constitutional program is how to manage this. If you don't create states, then you put what you call it, federal character. Everything is just how to create this. But the creation is for allowing the petit bourgeois to have more of the national wealth. If you create local government, the petit bourgeois that will, they get offices and they get the perks. If you create states, the petit bourgeois get the offices and get this. What does the ordinary man get? What the ordinary man, mostly farmers, need, the petit bourgeois are not thinking about it. They need a transformation of the whole. Inherited over 600 years, we are still using the whole. Why? Because the petit bourgeois are not working with it. The British are not interested in it. The Americans are not interested in where the petit bourgeois go to buy things. The whole, how can the whole be there 600, 700 years and we have all kinds of engineers, all kinds of technicians, they cannot transform the whole? It's a class problem. Because the whole is what the farmers, and then they turn around and say, agriculture. How can, they themselves will never ask their children to go and break their back with hoes. And then they try to get machines, as Shagari did. After 2 years, the machines broke down, and then the farmers, has to wait for 6 months to replace the broken thing. But 6 months, the farming season is gone. So of course, the whole tractor became a useless thing. Now, Tinubu is trying to bring them again without going to history to see how that happened. They don't read the files. They don't read the files. You have to go to the file. That is the reason why the files exist, to guide you when there is a present issue. Has it been dealt with in the past? How? Why did it fail? Why did it succeed? What lessons can we get from the failure or the success to handle the problem well? Everybody says, no. We go to Singapore, we go to America, we go to Germany to see how they're doing it. If we could go there, why didn't we go there before? Is the present generation better than the other one? The one before? They would have gone there. But the circumstances of the country demand that you take into consideration the concrete character of the place. I don't know whether I'm running too much. So let me now get to probably what people, have been concerned with. That is, how do you solve the problem? I've listed these four, and these politicians, they have their way, let me be nice. They have their way because of how they understand things. They call conference, they call meeting, they call everything. They think that, it is just people using their brains to decide how things are wrong and this. It is not like that. There are certain concrete situations that are problematic. The colonial structures are problematic. The social security in the society is problematic. The repression is problematic. The manipulation by the petit bourgeois is problematic. The question of socialization is problematic. You have to solve all of them. But you see, the politicians, they tell you, oh, we are going to build electricity. This thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 our program. We have 5 from program. We are going to solve this. What kind of policy making is that? You cannot be picking these things one. When are you going to pick all of them? Solution will mean which is what in technical terms is called the principal contradiction. Which among all these is the principal? By which you mean, if you solve it, it will collapse to some degree the others. You cannot say you are going to be, they list all kinds of things they want to solve. They never, how do you, they say you can be walking and chewing gum at the same time. Yes, but how much gum can you chew? So you have to decide what is the principal contradiction, which if you handle, it becomes easier to remove the rest. And for me, the principal contradiction is the petit bourgeois manipulation now. We have seen how they inherited it, the function that it fulfills for them in terms of getting a larger share of the national cake than they otherwise would have gotten from production. This is why nobody's interested in production. One of the politicians was talking about production, but he really didn't understand what he was talking about because he thought that production was trade. Trade is the same production. All this so-called manufacturing is not production. When Dangote does what exists, it's trade. You go to the store, you buy a bicycle. The bicycle is in a package. You come home and then they give you a manual to put the bicycle together. You did not manufacture the bicycle, you bought it. It's what he's doing. He goes to a business person, he gets the manual, and then he brings all the parts, and then he brings this thing. That is not manufacturing. That's not manufacturing. It's trade, but it's a bigger, because the form of manufacturing is there. The petit bourgeois always confuse form with content because the form is there. They say it's manufacturing. There's no manufacturing industry. Manufacturing is creating that manual. Creating the manual is manufacturing. It is not what you have created the manual and then somebody uses the manual to put the things together. Then you say it's the manufacturer. What kind of manufacturer is it? And there is no manufacturing because the petit bourgeois cannot manufacture. They're not capitalists and they're not workers, but they run society. So if you want to solve the ethnic problem, you have to tackle the problem of the petit bourgeois, being in charge of society. And it's not a matter of you just come and start shouting, we need change, we need change, we need change, so you need change. It means organization. What is the alternative class that can take over from the petit bourgeois? You get them into power. What class? For you to decide which class you think is going to get into power. And be authentic. Handle the matter of the whole. Handle the matter of what we eat being preserved. Not buying Indomie and buying all these other things. We have yams, we have cassava. They tend to have seasons. Can we act in such a way that they don't have season? We can things, we do things, we produce our own local things. That is where the market is. The petit bourgeois always think that they are the market. They're only about 26% of the market. The rest are eating local things. and they're eating it the way that their forefathers 600 years ago are eating. That's not development. If you are doing exactly the same thing that your great-great-great-great-grandfather did, how can you say, because you're wearing trousers and driving car? Can I say you have not moved anywhere? So that is the issue. Let us not follow these people sheepishly. Let us think. That is the whole reason why there's education. We have been trying this thing, federal character, even now in the villages, they are convincing people this one will rule for this period, another one will rule. Nobody's talking about what is the price structure. How do we bring it down? How do we change the whole? How do we change a goosey soup into something? These things we have inherited from our great-great-grandfathers, hundreds of years, and no change. That is the problem. Development is about change. And the stumbling block is these people. So unless a new set of leadership comes, and I'm not talking about politicians. When I was in the trust fund, you'd be surprised what the bureaucracy, the civil servants, and the business people do. They're even worse than politicians. But the searchlight is not on them. The searchlight is not on them. The problem I had with ETF was anytime we came for board meeting, the vast majority of bankers would be there waiting at the gate to get us to transfer some of the money to be deposited in their bank. I said, is that how you do banking? I thought you give loans to structures that are built, and then you get the reward from the profit of that. That's how societies grow. Are you going to build your stock by going to different agencies of government to get them to put money in your bank? But every morning they're there and they're offering you things to make them deposit money. And then people will come, they want to produce, to give laptops to primary school. I say, you're crazy. How many primary schools, are teaching under trees? So for you, this is the priority. You haven't even talked about ordinary library in primary school, in secondary school even. You're talking about, or even university, what kind of library is there? You're talking about giving computer because they want to sell computer. And then the management is telling us, oh, I brought somebody who has a good, I say, why are you bringing somebody? You are a planner. You haven't planned. You want to outsource the plan. You want to outsource everything to these people. It's not politicians. You make the mistake of just saying it's politicians. It's the petit bourgeois, that group, including me, so that we don't think I'm talking about everyone. We're all the same. We don't have connection. I wish you should read Ayandele's book on the elite, Nigerian elite during the colonial time. They were the ones exploiting people directly, not the British. The interpreter, the residence cook, the black policeman, all this, they are the people, So that's what they remember. That's what they do. So I would like to stop there, and hopefully maybe there will be questions, and I'll be ready to answer the questions. Thank you very much. Anuchena, happy birthday again. Happy birthday.
Thank you,
live
Thank
to
you so
150.
Amen.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Professor
so much.
Nnoli, for that indelible insight into understanding the complexities of Nigeria's national identity as it is today. But more so, you did not only delve into the historical context, one that focuses so much on the colonial legacy and the arbitrary drawing of our borders, but one also that centered on ethnic divisions, which is something I think you started with on the concept of ethnicity. But it's interesting to see how you've also addressed identity politics, particularly focusing on the petty bourgeois and their role in contemporary politics in Nigeria. Reminds me of my political science class 101, particularly with Karl Marx theoretical foundation of petty bourgeoisie and class struggles. That said, I have been rightly informed by the chairman of the organizing committee that each panelist is entitled to 3 minutes. Now, that is going to be a tall order for me to handle, given the intellectual minds on the panel itself. So in light of that, I'm going to appeal to my next panelist, and the person of Kate Pam Sembeck, given her background, given her passion, her vested interest in Nigeria's development, and also her professional expertise as a certified international manager, as well as a learning and development specialist, to kind of provide some kind of focus for us on how we leverage diversity as a strength in nation building, but also how do we foster inclusive governance and economic empowerment. Ms. Kate Palm Selleck, I'm going to open the mic for you. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. The mic is yours.
I am. Thank you very much to Prof for laying such a solid foundation and giving us a historical context of how we got here as a nation. And I want to also say happy birthday to my brother, Uchenna. We've been on this journey for a very long time. The whole concept of the Unity Schools All Students Association was built on a unified Nigeria, so that we can, because a fractured Nigeria or fractured nation can never be developed. So you've asked me to just focus on our diversity. I think somewhere along the line, just like Prof laid the foundation, somewhere along the line, we've lost that vision of, we've lost our national identity, and our leaders have lost the vision of what Nigeria will look like, or what Nigeria should look like now, or what it will look like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 100 years from now. Because beyond ethnicity, right now, the average Nigerian in Nigeria thinks in ethnic terms. We put our ethnic identities above our national identity. And so how can we leverage this diversity? He talked about the concept of federal character, which in itself can work for us. But then again, in a society where, and I'll take a leaf from Hofstede's cultural dimension, in our culture, there's a high power distance. And because of the high power distance, where there's a huge distance between the rich and the poor, the older and the younger, the concept of respect, the more, those in leadership, that concept, that high power distance. So it creates room for oppression. And so because of that, if you look at where we're coming from, he talked about people coming, there was a Hausa man who won an elective position in Igbo land. Now you do that, it's like it suddenly looks like, oh, they're coming to oppress us. And so that takes away, the opportunity for meritocracy. I look forward to a Nigeria where tomorrow people are in power, people are in positions because they merit it. But you see, such structures are not in place. A case in point is our Unity schools. In Federal Government Girls College, Langtang, where I come from, where I went to, when we were in school, we had the Lagos bus that was bringing in people from Lagos. Kaduna bus was bringing people from Kaduna, people from Enugu. The schools were built with that structure in place. Today, in fact, there are only 2 or 3 people who are not from Plateau State in that school. And the only reason why they are in that school is because they live in Jos. I think 2 Igbo people and 1 Yoruba, as at the last time we checked. So where's the federal concept that we have, the national identity that we're creating there? Even though it's supposed to be a unity school that leverages our diversity. And so what else are we teaching these people? And then let's look at the religious identity that has created, the issues that we have. I come from Jos in Plateau State, and I want to speak in very simple terms that, relatable terms. I come from Plateau State, and I remember, and I know that any child, anybody that is younger than 25 years, we've been plagued by conflicts, with Hausa, Fulanis, Biron people. It started with Biron people. Till today, they're still killing people. They're killing people in Benue State. These conflicts still still abound. These ethno-religious conflicts. And today you go to certain schools, there are certain parts of town, you go to certain schools, and there's not one Christian in that school. And you go to other parts of town, and you go to a school, and I'm not just talking about secondary schools and even primary schools, there's not one Muslim. Now, with all these things happening, I ask, and it really bothers me, what picture are we painting? What will Nigeria look like 50 years from now? When the conflict in Plateau State started, some people were like, we're not born. Some had just been born. I have a nephew. They don't even know what some of us here in this meeting can relate to Jos in those days. You were going to Teen City. Everybody wanted to go to Jos. Anybody could. We have an Igbo community that have been there since the 1930s. Yeah, the Benin people have been there since the 1920s. Yoruba people. Plateau State Jos used to be a microcosm of Nigeria. But now it's not the same. You can't even go. I don't even know why, we still have those indigenous forms and things like that. You should be able to live. It shouldn't be your state of origin or your indigenous form. It should be about where you stay. I should be able to run for election anywhere that I stay in Nigeria. Shouldn't it be? But now you have to go back. If you want to cast your vote, you have to go back. If you want to run for any elective position, you have to go back to your state to go and vote. If I vote in Abuja, that means, I live in Abuja, or if I live in Lagos, I cannot run for a position in Lagos. So how are we going to be integrated as a country? How are we going to, build our nation as one Nigeria? Because tomorrow, wherever you go, if I'm going to run, when we're selecting the criteria for selecting our leadership, by the time we begin to look at it, we're already divided along ethnic lines. So I'm just raising a few issues, coupled with the distraction that I'm dealing with the baby here. I'm just raising some of these issues, looking at our educational structures, our political structures, and I'm saying we need to dig deep and be intentional. I know when Singaporeans were building Singapore, they had clear objectives of what they wanted by age. When in their policy, I know that there's one that really struck me. They said by age 7 in the school curriculum, one of the objectives, the objectives that they want to achieve is that by age 7, a child must love Singapore. What structures do we need to put in place to make the Nigerian love Nigeria above being a Hausa or Yoruba or Igbo? I think that is where we will begin to leverage on our diversity to create the Nigeria or the nation that we want to see. Let me stop here. I hope that I have made some sense.
You you've made some inroad into this conversation we're going to have, because I'm going to come back to you at some point in time to tell us how Nigerians' diversity could be leveraged as a strength in nation building, given the perspective you hold on the questions you've asked. That said, my next panelist, it's someone too familiar to me as well. He's the executive director of We the People, a civil society organization based in the Niger Delta cities of Port Harcourt and Calabar. He's passionate about projecting community voices in global conversations around climate change and climate justice, but more importantly, around environmental remediation, one that strengthens community agencies in engaging government and corporate powers. His name, ladies and gentlemen, is Ken Henshaw. Ken Henshaw, if your mic is open, I'm going to ask you to help us address some of these very interesting issues that deals on the inclusiveness, inclusive governance and nation building, in particular, the role of governance in promoting national unity, as well as addressing issues of marginalization, given the work you've done so far within the Nigerian context. Mr. Ken Henshaw, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Please confirm I'm audible. Yes, thank you. And happy birthday to you, Mr. Nnoli. Thank you so much, Prof. It's difficult to speak after such very profound scholars have spoken. But I think it's very critical that we start the conversation from the start. When we say nation building, what exactly do we mean, by the terminology nation building? The first step towards nation building is to identify the national identity, okay? That foundation, that fulcrum upon which a nation can be built. So a nation is not built by a single person or a group of people. A nation is built by the collective, the entire nation itself. And it's also important to say that nations have come and gone, okay? So nations are not sacrosanct. It's a concept. It's a social reality. And sometimes the social foundations of the identity that creates nations fade away, and those nations basically wither away. We've seen it happen with the Soviet Union. That was a nation created at a time under a certain Marxist ideology, communist ideology. And at a point, that ideology failed to hold water and it withered away. We've even seen it in Europe with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, that lasted for about 150 years and then broke down, and it's all but gone today. So nations come and go. And it's also important to say that sometimes to build a nation from a collective of people or a collective of nations, because Nigeria is actually a collection of nations, to build a nation out of those nations, you will sometimes need to deconstruct what we call a nation today, because this is not really a nation. Our concept of nation needs to be deconstructed in order for us to, to create a new nation. And just to reiterate what Prof said, because it's very important to my argument, that the Nigerian nation, it's not a nation in the true sense of the word. Before colonial times, this country was a collection of very many nations, very, very many nations. And under colonial might and power, these different distinct ethnic nationalities and nations were forced together to create a nation, a make-believe nation, without any sense of unified identity, principles, or purpose. And so the Nigerian nation is a creation of the figment of the mentality of the British colonialists. And that nation served, like Prof said, only the priorities and the purpose of the British Crown at the time. And that's why you have railways in Nigeria that lead only to the sea, because the Nigerian state and the infrastructure in the Nigerian state were created specifically to take, resources from the hinterland to the seaport from where they are shipped to Europe. And that's the point Prof so expertly made. But it's important to say that that mentality could have been reversed. In 1960, when we had our own indigenous parliament and our own indigenous government, that was a profound opportunity for us to redefine our states, the basis of our nationhood. But we failed to do so. We simply inherited the structure of the British colonial states, and the elite in Nigeria who took over power, they became what Prof called the petit bourgeoisie, but I call them the comprador bourgeoisie. That's the more appropriate term for it. The inheritors of the colonial infrastructure, the comprador bourgeoisie. They basically inherited that structure and continued with the same relations of production up till today. So today we have a nation that does not really represent the interest of the Nigerian people, but rather represents the interest of the metropole. That point being said, it's also important to state here that we often say that the Nigerian state is a dysfunctional state. Yes, it is very dysfunctional. But the question is, dysfunctional by what benchmark? What function was the Nigerian state created to achieve? When we talk about functionality of a system, what you call a dysfunctional system is functional to the creators of that system. The Nigerian state was created to be functional to those who created it. In the first place, the colonial administration that created it and the imperialist powers that created it. And later on, by the ruling elite in Nigeria. Is the Nigerian state functional at the moment to the ruling elite? The answer is yes. It provides them the resources to go out of the country for medical treatment. It's only in a dysfunctional state that you can have 20 policemen guarding one politician, while the majority of citizens do not have any security. So for citizens of Nigeria, 200 million of them, the police force is dysfunctional for them. But for the people who are the elite and who preside over the system, is functional for them. And so the question is, who was this state created for? Who was this country created for? And to who is it functional for? And my argument is that the Nigerian state is functional for the elite of Nigeria. And I think, and Prof did raise this point also, the point which I simply call the weaponization of ethnicity. I'll be 50 soon also. And unfortunately, I mean, I live at a time where I was able to see our country not very much tilted towards the divisions and the pools of ethnicity. I've also read in history that the reality is that there was really no Igbo nation 200 years ago. It didn't exist. There was the Ohafia man, the Aro man, the Ngwa man. They were all distinct ethnic groups, but the need to forge a national identity forced people, because you could only bargain in the emerging Nigerian state if you belong to a bigger group. That's how you could bargain. And so the easiest people to forge that identity with were people who spoke the same language with you and who lived in the same area with you. The same thing with the Yoruba nation. I read that 200 years ago, there was really, strictly speaking, no core Yoruba nation, or it was not even a team. There was the Egba man, there was the Ife man, there was the Modakeke man, there was the Eko man, right? They were distinct people, but we created these cleavages of ethnicities in antagonism to each other. And I think that this is happening because we have failed to create a basis of unity. I'll conclude by simply saying this, that in my opinion, nationhood is work in progress. Nations are not created once and for all. Nation building is a continuous exercise, and every society needs to continuously define and redefine the basis of its nationhood, the ethos, the principles, the objectives, the goals, and the basis of its nationhood as it progresses. And that's why you need to have a body of very active citizens who work on that, who keep continuously doing that, redefining the basis of nationhood, and that redefinition, that working towards promoting that sense of nationhood is the very meaning of nation building. And in Nigeria, we have simply lost that foundation, and it's something that I think that we need to recreate. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henshaw. I know you for your articulate and astute delivery in times like this. I really appreciate decidedness in giving into it. My next panelist is someone also, when we begin to talk about pre- and post-colonialism, we're looking at a situation where we can begin to imagine the challenges that Nigeria currently faces. And my next speaker is no other than an alumna of the Lagos Business School, and also an alumna of politics, policy, and governance. A Nigerian who has devoted her time So rethinking a new generation of political leaders with strong foundation in values, as well as providing some disruptive thinking and developing the skills necessary for effective governance. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nnoli and Professor Nnoli, please join me to welcome Ms. Sotoye Rollins Apiefi to the mic. Ms. Sotoye, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, thank you very much. The mic is open for you.
Thank you. A very good evening to you. And I want to say happy birthday to my brother Uchenna. And thanks again to Prof for opening my eyes. I love that he took us through a short history class. And of course, to the other speakers who have so eloquently, laid out and shared their thoughts. So I listen to you and I hear you ask about history and how we can move forward. My core is geology, right? And as a geologist, one of the things that I know is that truly the past is the key to the future. However, we also acknowledge that, things can happen, on the go. Change is the only constant thing that can change that dynamism, right? We also acknowledge that these dynamics in this age, compared to what we know as history, we need to find a unique balance. And I will take us back to one simple concept of community. So one of the things I love is that it is the communities that make up what we call Nigeria today, those different enclaves that make up Nigeria. And when I hear us speak about the colonialists, what has happened in history and in the past, the question I ask myself is, when then can we move forward? How can we go back and build our communities? I think, as important as history is, that it's time for us to decide to move forward. And this is where I will ask, for the over 100 persons of this call, on this call, can we take a step back and go to our communities? The things that we see at national level are the things that happen in our communities in itself. So it's not isolated. It just builds up. And that's why oftentimes we say that the leaders come from amongst us. So let's go back to our communities. Think of your clan. Let's say, for instance, I'll use myself. I'm from River State. I'm from Opobo. I'm from Apiafi's family. Now, within Apiafi's family, do we have, I know some nice name, the bourgeois. I was trying to get the other very nice name that the Ken just spoke about. Do we have people in there? For me, the simplest term would be to say the house rats and the field rats. Do we have people that present those behaviors? Then if we have people in our closer communities that present these behaviors, it is only normal that those people will take those behaviors and then they will push it on to the national level. In some quarters, I often hear, oh, Nigeria should divide, we should go our different ways. Excuse us. Can the over 100 persons on this call point to any state in Nigeria where we can collectively pick and say this state serves as a sample of goodness? Can we pick that one state? Peradventure, we find that one state. Can we pick one local government where every single thing is functioning as should be? Let's flip it again. In our families, our brothers, our sisters, how do we relate? That is why you see I'm key about the Ubuntu philosophy. I like to simplify things. The Ubuntu philosophy is simply put, I am because we are. Putting emphasis on the collective, the whole, rather than an individual. If we want to move forward as a people, in our family, if we offend ourselves, do we come to the round table and have a conversation? Do we overlook some of the hurts and decide that because we want to move forward, we will forge ahead? As simple as it sounds, it is so powerful. Regardless of how we have grouped ourselves, Northwest, East, South, whatever, can we then begin to forge those conversations to say, yes, we understand our history, where we're coming from. But what is even better is that we craft a forward-looking vision and see the areas of alignment. The second thing that is important in communities, who heads the community? Now, I want to state, and I believe it because I have seen it in my life, my father, who instilled the right values. What values are we instilling first in our family units, in the communities, and then around? In our organizations, the places where we work. Those mid-level that Prof talked about, who are neither the bourgeois nor amongst the poorer class, those who scuttle to government agencies for contracts, in what way do we present ourselves? So for me, the question at the core is, how can we step back? How can we step back and self-assess? I have been accused in some forums of being too moralistic. But I think that as religious as Nigeria is, we need to begin to attack these issues from an ethical and a moral standpoint. We owe it to ourselves as individuals to do what is right. I'm sorry that I don't have many high-sounding bites, but I believe in the power of simplicity because I have seen it work. For one of the things I take away here is Prof clearly sharing that we must understand the problem. And the problem is that individually, we have all failed to take ownership. We have failed to collectively hold ourselves accountable when we err. And that ability to hold ourselves accountable when we err then gives us the moral rights to look someone else in the eye and say, you have erred. So can we then go back to the drawing board and see what we can change and how we can move this nation forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Apiafi. I think I did leave out that aspect of, your philosophy that is vested in the Ubuntu idea. Over a period of time, you've demonstrated that Nigeria needs to rethink their very existence. Just like you said, can we go back to our community? Can we go back to starting from the family unit to ask these basic questions? I'm going to ask you to ponder on this when we come back on how do we ensure accountability and transparency in governance, particularly in Nigeria. My next panelist, and I want to say that we're doing very well here. My next panelist is no other than the person of Mohammed Sheyi Gambo. Mohammed Sheyi Gambo is the former National Publicity Secretary of Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, which is also known as PENGASIN. He's a Pan-Africanist, he's a nationalist, and of course, a good governance advocate. In light of that, Mr. Gambo, I want you to probably ponder a little bit on how Nigerians' diversity can be leveraged, but more so on how do we begin to think about promoting economic opportunities and reducing inequality, given the roles that you served within Pengasin. Mr. Shehi Gambo, the mic is yours.
Yeah, can you hear me? Good evening, sir. Yes. Good evening. Birthday boy. Happy birthday and welcome to the fifth class. Say nowadays, I'm so glad to be here. It's actually a privilege, and I mean, I've really enjoyed the discourse, especially submission of their uncle Prof. Well, I've always been a believer that national discussions should bring light and not just eat. And this is what I'm seeing here. So kudos to you, moderator. Well, my experience is thus. Let me just give it a little background. My dad is Fulani from Adamawa. My mom is Yoruba from Lagos. And my mom she spoke a very fluent Igbo because she's schooled in Nigeria. So I've never in my life had the opportunity to look at any Nigerian outside the merits you bring on the table. You know, it's so unfortunate that a critical mass of us long around this. In all the positions I've held, I mean, just as Prof was alluded to, that his close friends were from me. I've always had friends from all over the place. I've only been to my state Adamawa, so I'm more of a negotiator. I want to digress a little about, but it's still part of what we are saying, that we have an elitist issue. In whatever name we call it, as Prof had given his own definition of them. And I remember I think it's the Roman, is it the Roman or the Greek meteorology that talks about Janus? Janus is the god of the door that has four faces, one looking outside and one looking inside. So the elites of our country, you always ask yourself that, what do they see outside? What do they expect Nigeria to be? You know, there was a time that used to call us the giant of Africa. You know, we lived it. We gave, we set the agenda in Africa. We are frontline states in South Africa. In short, we are very promoted freedom of that country. But look at us today. What do we see? What are the definitions or what are the visions of the elites about their country today? We see people making very unguarded, insensitive pronouncements, comments, and they go scot-free, no sanction. And that's what I think has got us. No, you know, we can go on and on and on, but I've always said a country without justice, a country without commensurate punishment for what is wrong, that country will not go far. We still always have this state of arrested development. Because I'll tell you this. During our elections, people will go ballot. We know them in our neighborhood. People will say some people should not come out. We know them. It's not only what happened in Lagos that some characters did not allow some people to come out. It happened in Nnoli here as well. They said if you are not voting for party A, don't bother coming out. And nothing happened. So we are living in a state of lawlessness. And I feel and I believe that the almighty formula is appropriate punishment for ill-conceived, attitude. We can't. There's nothing you can build on disorderness. There's nothing you can build on a nation that does not have what we call a national philosophy. What do we start for? What's our national philosophy as a people? We don't have any. The we don't have any, and that is why you can see people that shouldn't be that shouldn't be local government chairman or ward chairman. You see them at the pinnacle of our political decision-making processes. So we have fundamental issues, and I want to say that, as I said, discussion should bring light, not just it, not just sounding thing. There's some things that Prof said about journalism that I don't agree with, but to a large extent, but I want to say that we cannot come here and not really tackle, with you permission, sir, may I continue in this route?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I said we cannot come here and not go back. And go back the same way. That's what I'm saying. That there's that need for us to have a government that is firm, a government that wouldn't, or people in governance, people at the top of security agencies that will not take sides, they are owned by the rest of whose orcs is God. Without that, there's nothing you say. If there's no justice, there's nothing we can build on it. If there's no that sense of that, if this thing happens, I will get reprieve. There's nothing we can. Look at our elections, for example. As Prof said, we don't need to go far. We have our own tested political process. Look at option A4. Beautiful, simple. You don't need BOVAs or what's that thing that they did last election. You don't need it. Option A4 settles everything. You count it, they count it. That's all. We don't need all this. And if we don't get the politics right, we can't move forward as a people. Our brothers in the House of Assembly mooted this bill that every Nigerian of voting age must vote. As my people say, Nnoli, Nnoli, must vote. But it was killed. Imagine if all the youths that of age will not be watching Premiership or be going up, but they are more sensitive and they look at, okay, this is our country. They own that percent. As we said, we are a different kind of people. What work in America will not necessarily work here. And there's no democracy that's the same. So there's that need for us as a people that what works for us. Our people are stubborn. Our people have shown that there's a guardian. There's some people that when it comes to an election, blood test. Is this how we'll be going? And we have what can solve it. I don't see why the political elite cannot look at these things. Option A for making people, making sure that everybody of voting age votes compulsorily. That's the way forward. Now, using our diversity is so easy. You look at our football team, that's it. The best person for the best position. The best person is still what I've been saying, merits. The best person should handle the best, irrespective of where you go. That's the only way our diversity can work. Diversity, there's no, I would say that in my short life of 50-something years, there's no tribe in Nigeria that you don't have the good, the bad, and the dog. There's no tribe. There's no tribe in Nigeria that you don't have geniuses. But we sit down, we talk, we don't take it to the next level. And that's why I hope that there'll be a compendium or there'll be a submission of what we're discussing that will be sent to relevant agencies and national retention and all this, the presidency. So the issues are not what you need, what's it called? They're not further maths. You don't need to be a genius. Our issues, our challenges, the solutions are simple. So simple. Option A for making sure that everybody can vote, making sure that when issues get to what's it called, security agencies, their own bias. They do what they are meant to do. That's all. What we are suffering from is that that issue of people seeing themselves above the law. If you are caught, you can make a phone call and you can get away with blue murder. Instances that people have killed in this country, that we know them, but they're untouchable. You cannot run a country like that. There's no English that we say as long as there's an absence of justice, equal rights. There's not everything we are saying here, no amount to anything. No postulation, no philosophy, no anything political things that we say. And the absence of what I've said, because and time is not on our side. Nearly all the countries that we started have left us. Even in nations that are coming and have left us. The Rwanda is now a country that Nigeria will be looking up to. You say that, okay, this is a democracy that works. South Africa, they are everywhere. What's it called? Ghana. Can you imagine? Everywhere we go. There's nowhere that Nigeria has been bashed. Just a week now, Germany, something against Nigeria. UAE, something against Nigeria. What's it called? America, something against Nigeria. Whereas, even the American state have said that Nigerians are the most brilliant minds that they have. I was in Los Angeles, I saw some Nigerian guys. Brilliant. But the issue is that if you bring those guys here, they'll not perform. Because somebody will bring somebody that should be opening the doors for them and put them at the end. So we have an inverted values. Our values have to be fixed as people. That's the only way our comparative advantage can come out, the robust comparative advantage can come out and serve us. And as I said, like, time waits for nobody. Nobody's going to wait for Nigeria to get their house together. Everybody's getting their acts together. And my parents, we're all here. I also have an issue, we also discussed something about the Civil War. And I don't think, apart from Prof, somebody, I've not seen anybody touch it. We need to have one narrative about what started the Civil War. We need one narrative about the gains, like the technological gains of the Civil War. We need one narrative about why it went wrong. Not, it's painful, because every time I look at it, I mean, but I know that Northerners don't wake up and started killing. Something must have, there must be a careless talk. We all know those issues. But when some of us talk and we try to demonize a tribe and it won't work. We have to look at ourselves in the eye. It's okay, this is where we got it from. We are brothers. That thing has passed. Yes, we're talking about history, but we cannot too dwell on some of these odds if we want to go. I mean, that's why you see that Rwanda, knowing their peculiarity, I've said that there's some things. Yes, there you have the what's it called? The museums that will show, the enormity of the killings. But there are also some narrative that say you should not talk about. So we need one narrative. I'm tired of, you should be tired of all the conferences. You elites, should come this narrative. This is what happened. Let us dust it. Anybody that wants to go, let this one narrative about it. And this is what you can see. I'm on so many social media platforms. And every time I listen to some of the comments there, I will not be able to sleep at night. I wonder what is going on. I will not be able to judge. Raw hatred that you can cut, raw hatred in this country. You can't move like that. Everybody's suspicious. I should be able to go to the east, and you know that I'm a northerner and I feel safe. I mean, a businessman, an Igbo person should be at home as they used to be in the north, and not any small crisis you burn up there. It's wrong. But we know, as I said, as long as the people perpetrating this evil are not brought to justice, we will not move forward. There's not all this stuff. We will talk and talk and talk. But when you start using them as example, people know that they can be touched. People know that on religious crises, people are giving life sentence. People are, the court take discuss, and people behave. So I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but the few answers I've said. Let us try optioning for our politics. Let us also ensure that everybody of voting age votes. You know, they have killed the bill, and I understand, because if a bill like that goes, it's going to be it's going to change. You can see some movement during the last election. Imagine if those guys can, you know, can translate that energy into a potent political movement. You know, we are home free. So I don't know if I've made a little sense to the discussion tonight. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheyigambo. I truly appreciate the direction and perspective you provided. It further asks us to reflect on national identity and unity. But again, through that historical prism, for us to understand the contemporary challenges that we face, and how do we promote national consensus and integration amongst us as Nigerians. My next guest and final panelist is a lawyer and a foreign investment attorney for that matter, a clinical research project manager, and currently a global project manager in pharmaceutical research. My question is, how do we begin to understand, given his role in public affairs and governance with a radical leaning change? Barrister Nicholas Ukachi, my question to you, to this colloquium is, how do we address marginalization and promote citizenship over indigeneship, given everything we've learned pre and post-colonialism? Barrister Ukachi, the mic is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me start by saying to Mr. Nnoli, happy birthday. I think it's great that I was called last, because after listening to the August Assembly here, I was really intimidated. Honestly, I don't know what to say. So perhaps it's a great thing that most of the members of the audience would have slept off and they won't pay attention to me much, to be honest. But if you'll permit me, let me bring, because I'm not good at academics, so I'm going to try to humanize this conversation. I would say I am one of the manifestations of the problems of Nigeria, and I've experienced it personally. I happen by birth to originate from the East, but I grew up in the North, and I also schooled in the West. When Kate, permit me to use her first name, was speaking about Jos, it resonated with me because I grew up in Jos, schooled at the University of Jos, saw myself as a Bureau man, always, first and foremost, and was a victim of Jos crisis of 2001 that eventually culminated in my being in the United States. I'm not going to bore everybody by explaining that experience and how Jos turned, like she said, like an absolute heaven on the plateau to a war zone comparable to Bosnia Herzegovina. I'm sorry, pardon my pronunciation. But one thing I always remember, even before the crisis, is as much as I passed myself off as a Bureau man, I was always called Nyamiri. Always. Couldn't escape that. Even in the circles of my legal practice. It wasn't a statement that referred to my legal competence or lack of thereof, but essentially just my name, which I resented. Sometimes in jest, but sometimes in true seriousness. And when I was attending law school, Lagos, that's when I learned the expression Omoyibush, which I repeat frequently in jest, actually. But I've had that thrown at me when I was in law school, Lagos, not always in jest. Why do I bring this up? I bring this up not because I want to cast aspersions on anybody or paint myself as a victim. I am not by any measure. But to point out how we underestimate, how insidious and pernicious primordial tribalism exists amongst us in Nigerians. Forgive me, I think it was Ken Henshaw when he spoke about nationalities and how we have multiple nationalities and national identities. I will respectfully disagree with some of the basic premise of his position, because today, supposedly, one of the most peaceful and stable countries in the world is Switzerland, and it is made up of at least 4 major nationalities: Germans, French, if I remember correctly, Italians, and I believe Romanish, if I'm not mistaken. Germany is made up of Germanic tribes. Same thing, the United Kingdom. So if we continue to hearken to this refrain of Nigeria being a country made up of multiple nations, we lose sight of what the issues are. And believe you me, I used to be an ardent scholar of this refrain after my experience in Jos, especially after the Jos crisis. When I came to the United States, one of my main focus was to talk about ethnic cleansing being perpetrated amongst or on the Beram people and the people of Southern Kaduna. Irrespective of how you choose to define it, I saw it as ethnic cleansing. Perhaps because I was an affected person. But I had to educate myself and realize truly that is not what the problem of Nigeria is. Respectfully so, if I may speak. Gambo spoke, and he spoke about very eloquently about option A4. Of what use is your vote if your vote won't count? Of what use is every Nigerian voting if we say we have hardly ever had a free and fair election in Nigeria? What use then is your vote? None. Nothing. And then he talked about, and then we speak about the political class getting their act together, doing what they ought to do. When we talk about the political class correcting Nigeria, we operate from the assumption that they recognize the chaos, and the chaos is not. The chaos is a system they thrive on. The chaos is supported. The chaos is intentional, and it benefits this ruling class. And as a result, it would be naive of us to expect these same beneficiaries of the current inequities to change it. Why would they change it? That is not a component of power dynamics. It's not. And I do agree with Prof. Yes, I might diverge with you to some extent on the issue of extent of socialism and Karl Marx, the whole concepts of Karl Marx and all that. But we have a few things I will agree with you, and I agree with Karl Marx. Which brings me to the question you asked me. You see, going back to the class issue, Frantz Fanon warned, the ruling class will always try to keep the classes divided. That is their formula for survival. When we look at Nigeria, we look at the symptoms. We see the corruption, and we say corruption is the problem of Nigeria. I'm here to argue that corruption is only a symptom. Why? Corruption is an attribute of selfishness, and these things are prevalent when there is a state of denial, when people are not sure of their next meal. So that's why I see corruption as a symptom. Now, what now? Not to dwell too much on the problem. The what now today is, what are the things sustaining the system? And I will tell you, in my opinion, what I call them. I call them the 4 horsemen of our national apocalypse. And these are political ignorance, emotional immaturity and fragility, religious moronism, and primordial tribalism. I use these 4 on the operation, on the premise, if you will, on the assumption that intelligence and critical reasoning exists. So I'm speaking to people who I believe are the Nigerians who are all intelligent and have critical reasoning abilities. These are the things that stop us. Why do I say these stop us? Let me use a small game here. We cannot think about our circle of friends and people we know in Nigeria, and we can look back the last 15 years in the pattern of their criticism of national issues. And we can see how their chorus of dissent ebb and flow and change with the tides, depending on who is up there. We can speak about how we are unable to accept contrary views because it challenges our perceptions of our intellectual acuity. And most importantly, our perception of facts based on the people that pass those facts to us, our parents, our leaders. So accepting, for instance, a different version of the Civil War feels like this strongest form of disloyalty to my father, using that as an example, who may have given me a different version. We tried to talk about the Civil War. For those that will remember, we did have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. What happened? The same elite took it over and turned it into a cynical, very cynical and farcical theater of the absurd. What did we get out of it? Even the watered down Oputo panel report, what has happened about implementing it? I don't believe that the issue is for us to keep talking about the Civil War. Personally, I believe in the concept of carpe diem. Capture the day. Nobody is going to take away the power from this reprobate, hedonistic, and corrupt elite other than us. They will not change. And one of my heroes today in Nigeria is a young man called Very Dark Man. Yes, I have challenges with his crudeness, with his foul language, with his childish antics, but he has demonstrated to some extent the power of one. And then we have somebody like Aisha Yusufu, and we have a voice like Adiola Fayehun, who uses satire and comedy to sensitize about the issues in Nigeria, celebrated every other place except in the Nigeria she comes from. What do I advocate? I advocate that the power of one is infinitesimal, but the power of many is infinite. So the activists in this space must intentionally build bridges across these divides, across the divide of religion, across the divide of politics, and across the divide of tribe. Because by association, we are better able to recognize the things that hold us together and not the lies that divide us. Oftentimes, there's a gentleman, an American, I can't remember his name. a Black man who took out time to start interacting with KKK members, the Ku Klux Klan, an organization sworn to the eradication of Black people in America. That man has been able to turn 100 KKK members to disavow the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. What does that show? That socialization is probably one of the most effective forms of tutelage. And that socialization in the activist space in Nigerian discourse will not come from lone voices speaking separately, but speaking in a united format. If you turn around the table, how are Americans, the MAGA cult, being brainwashed and turned to useful idiots? I'm not insulting them. It's actually a political expression. Useful idiots for the elites. To the point, these people actually, poor, desperate Americans, contribute money to donate to Donald Trump when they heard that he was going to fall out of the billionaire list. So, what would I say? The same way they have been brainwashed is how we can unite. The activist voices must unite and continue to sensitize the rest of Nigerians, because the power truly lies with the people. And when enough of us are sensitized, we will see the change we seek for. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ukachi. I think you've eloquently expressed the thoughts, the minds of many of us that sometimes we find it difficult to put in straight words. Professor Nnoli, I'm going to come back to you again. I was actually given 2 hours of time to run this colloquium, but it looks like I have gone beyond my time, and I said it earlier on that this was going to be an uphill task, given the intellectual minds on this panel. And in light of that, I'm going to come back to Professor Nnoli to please give us give us some concluding thoughts on the topic, Nigeria, one nation, many voices, reaching critical consensus on nation building. Professor Nnoli, from the instructions I was given, that the professor should have another 3 minutes of closing thoughts. Thank you very much, Professor Nnoli.
Prof, you can unmute yourself, please.
Well, thank you very much, moderator, and thanks also all those on the panel that have spoken. I think we have some agreement on the fact that the identity question in Nigeria is still problematic. It's still problematic. And to some degree, we have some various ways that we think that this should be resolved. I don't know whether we all agree on the same process of resolution, but I think I was struck by the concept of community that was, mooted by our sister from Rivers. And I would like to say that that concept of community also involves the concept of niche. The concept of niche. Every community lives in a particular niche, and they have a historical responsibility to transform that niche for their own sustenance and betterment. I think this is the whole problem. And the only way that they can sustain that niche is by producing creatively to transform that niche. Any attempt to transform another niche instead of their own is simply a waste of time and a waste of energy. I think this is the problem. We cannot be ourselves. We cannot be united. We cannot move forward creatively if we leave our niche and start tampering with other niches. For example, what fruits do we have in the various Nigerian communities? What fruits do we have? How many of these fruits have we creatively developed? For example, canning them, doing things that will transform them for our own benefit. In fact, how many of them do we even eat these days? I think instead we have moved to other niches. We import apples, we import all kinds of things. Whereas what our fathers left for us before the British came, we have not done anything with. And this is where the vast majority of the people live. This is where they live. And I've said it, people don't have problem unless they come together somehow, unless they meet. Whereas the petit bourgeois have continued with their romance with external niches, the vast majority of our people are still in the niche that nature has assigned to them. People in other niches have developed techniques, technologies to transform their niche. We are trying to use that to transform our own niche, which is different. Before the British came, for example, in Igbo land, I keep saying, people built houses, there was no problem of housing. Once you are an adult, you are given land, you go to the environment, you use the resources of the environment, and you put up a structure. Now you have to go and look for cement. You have to go and look for rod. You have to go and look for all things that come from other niches. Whereas the normal thing to do is, with your scientific knowledge, make the mud that was used for building it much stronger by innovating. That's all we're asking. If people are involved in innovative practices in production, we will not be having problems like ethnic identity. I believe that. We can't. It's because of the fact that we are not addressing the issues. We say, okay, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's be less ethnic, let's be less religiously, antagonistic and so on, less. But the question is, how do we get the less? The people who are blocking this are the people, who are in charge of the society, who have to do these things we're asking them to do. And they're not, I mean, the history of the society is that they have not been willing to do that. We have over 60 years of independence, and we're doing exactly the same thing as others have done. We go to the external environment, we borrow things, we come here, try to apply to our own, and there is awkwardness. It doesn't work. We go back again and borrow some other things, we come here and apply, and then we say things are changing. Things are not changing. The more they change, the more they become the same. It's just changing in different ways. They are the same thing. We go, if there is an iPhone, we rush and get iPhone, and we try to use iPhone in Nigeria. If there is a new drug for cancer, we rush. It's the same thing we have been doing for a very long time. And the economy has been going backwards. We have to change. And we cannot change without fully understanding what the problem. We have to get back to our own niche. The essential productive instrument of that niche is the whole. We have to transform the whole. We have to transform the whole. If we cannot transform the whole, we cannot solve the ethnic question. We cannot solve the economic question. We cannot solve the political question. We have, for the Igbos, we have to change the way we climb the palm tree. It is ridiculous that we have engineers, we have all kinds of, there is no profession we don't have according by other niches. Yet, our people are climbing the palm trees like monkeys, I mean, with rope the same way for 600 years. We can change that. How then do we say that we are, developing? How? We have to do these things ourselves. And that is the problem. Some people are blocking it. We have to get by them and get a new people who will be interested in doing these things. Otherwise, we can keep talking and keep talking and keep electing people and keep moving around and around and around, and the economy will still keep going down. I have been a witness to this. I remember when the Naira was stronger than the pound. And we were saying, do the right thing. People say, this is that, we are blaming colonialism, that. The only savior we have is that we had oil. If we didn't have oil, we would not be talking here because we won't have this technology. We have oil, it has bailed us out over a long period of time. Now we are having a serious crisis because its ability to bail us out is diminished. We have to get to our niche and practice the development of our niche. I think that is the solution. Anything else? Well, we can keep talking. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Professor Nnoli, for your kind words and advice on how we move forward. From our understanding of creating, or keep to our niche or creating new niches to build a stronger, Nigerian society. It's also important for me to stress at this point that the philosophy of Ubuntu must also guide, our understanding towards reaching that consensus that we all agree upon. In light of that, I'm going to ask the panelists to please conclude in 1 minute, preferably trying to link their closing remarks to strategies that will forge a common ground to counter elite consensus as we debate this in other fora. One particularly, I believe, will emerge in a communique that will be issued by the organizing committee for the Nnoli 50th birthday, probably to the press someday. I would like to call on Ms. Kate Pam-Selek to give me 1 minute of closing remarks. Ms. Kate Pam-Selek, are you there? Ms. Kate Pam-Selek?
Can you hear me? Yes, I am.
We can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I think from the things that I said and from the things that starting from Prof and all the other speakers have said is we have to get to a point in Nigeria where we redefine our shared values. What are our values that we hold dear? How do we begin to entrench those values, starting from our educational system to the child, from the child to the adult? What picture of Nigeria do we want to paint, like I said, for future generations? Do we have a vision of the country that we want to see 50 years from now? China has their national planning is done for 50 years. Can we begin to think more long-term in our visioning? I think that's where the strategy, when in our planning, and of course, when we look at the values that we hold there, our principles, that's where the concept of Ubuntu that Sotonye shared so eloquently comes into play. How do we define the Nigerian? Who is a Nigerian? What again is our national identity? We keep talking about it. What is it? How can we break it down to the child who is going into kindergarten, who is starting school? So we must look at it from our educational system. And that's where the leadership also comes into play. What is the criteria for selecting our leadership? Because we keep talking about the petit bourgeois and all of that. That is quite, for me, that's above my head. Because what's important? What quality of leadership do we want to have? I mean, the criteria we use for hiring our employees is more strict than the criteria for running for political office. For the highest office in this country, the minimum qualification is a primary school certificate. We've seen all that. So what is the criteria? What should Nigeria's president look like? Our legislators, in terms of, and I'm not just talking about educational qualification. What is I'm talking about morality, character. Should there be a character test, a criteria that we have? In the religious context, permit me to make a reference to the Bible, where they said, he who desires a position of leadership, a deacon, should be a husband of one wife. Those are very simple criteria, must be in control of their families. And so it takes us back to all of the issues that we've talked about. But I will stop on these 2 points: redefining our shared value, our vision, and also the criteria for leadership. Those are 2 simple strategies that I think we need to look at to get to the Nigeria that we desire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Selek. I don't know how to link this up, but I think my very good friend and brother, Mr. Henshaw, will do us, more good when we actually begin to move away from petty bourgeoisie and comprador bourgeoisie to strategies to which we can build bridges, particularly one that addresses issues of solidarity, kindness, cooperation, respect, and compassion, the Ubuntu philosophy. Mr. Ken Henshaw, your closing remarks. 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me back. And I cannot thank Prof enough and the other speakers. I'll just take it from where the last speaker stopped, Pam, to define and build our nation on a different set of paradigms. The nations in Europe were built, their wealth and their greatness were built on the paradigms of plunder, slavery, and colonialism. We cannot, there's nobody else in the earth to colonize or to plunder. So if we benchmark our development, ideas on the, in quote, civilization of Western Europe and the Americas, we will fail. We need to define what development means to us as a people. It cannot be the same paradigms that was applied in Europe. First thing to say. The second thing which is important to say is that when we talk about defining our goals, the question is who defines those goals? And the people of this country seem to have abdicated the responsibility for the defining of our purpose and our goals to the political elite who control the executive and the legislative arm at the national and at the state level. We have given them the responsibility of defining where we go as a country. That job has never been the responsibility of those. As holders of the social contract, it is the Nigerian people that should define where this country goes to. I'll conclude by simply saying that the idea of defining the nation, we have an ongoing contestation, always a contestation about defining what Nigeria stands for. And there are different forces pushing and pulling. Boko Haram is a nation-building organization. They are building the Nigerian nation along their own thinking and along their own lines. And there are many forces like that who are building the Nigerian nation according to their imagery, what they think of the Nigerian state. So there are many forces contesting to define what the Nigerian nation should be. Unfortunately, the forces of Ubuntu, the forces that are progressive, who should be aligning, linking up, and fighting to build an identity, a national identity, a national cohesion that speaks to the ethos of the Nigerian state. Those forces are not talking to themselves. And that's what we need to start doing, working together, building solidarity, and redefining the ethos of our own country.
Thank you very much, my friend and brother, Mr. Ken Henschel. In light of that, I think I have Mr. Gambo. Do I still have Mr. Gambo around? Mr. Gambo, are you still there? Mr. Gambo. All right. I'll move over to my dear friend, Barrister Nick.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly ask you a quick one. For 1 minute, please give your closing remarks and, please highlight on, how national consensus and integration can be promoted in Nigeria, given your background as well.
Oh, okay. I think I'll take this quote from Amos 3. Can two work together except they agree? Agreements also talk about consensus. We have to have an agenda of where we want to go. And as I tell people, we have only one life to live. We either make it worth it for our successor generations, or we continue in this state of arrested development. Across board, wherever we are, we have to start for what is right. I mean, we, irrespective of whose ox is God, we all know what is right at every particular time. We've seen businesses that are institutions today that's opportunity we are giving for people from all our tribes. FCMB is an example, because Alex Ekweme Otumba Shubumi Balu to become the first indigenous bank in Nigeria. I also know that when people were losing their heads in Adamawa, the Lamido said every people that would get into the palace were made safe. I mean, I spoke to one of the people that was so protected at that time. So even when Nigerians were losing their heads, we had people that stood, above all these differences that we've seen. So, as I still want to reiterate that we need a national philosophy. We need something that is guiding us. We need something that we're looking up to. It's this thing will not happen in isolation. You have to sit down and say, okay, this is where Nigeria is. The Yorubas have something that is, something close to what I when it's about what they call the concept of the Omoluabi. The Omoluabi concept is such that there are some things that you are not expected to do. When you do them, they say that you're not deviant, they're very negative. So we must have that. We must have what makes you a Nigerian, not just because you are born and bred here, but there must be some characteristics of and the way you engage that makes you a Nigerian. You look at the Japanese. Japanese will go to World Cup, everybody will go. They'll be picking the bean. They'll clear the stadium. You understand? So we need to have a value system that does not celebrate corruption, thuggery, And I still say it that the executive arm has a lot to play. We have to make sure that all our security agencies are above board. We have to make sure that the judiciary works. It's not based on cash and carry. So, I mean, the elements of a progressive, forward-looking country are there. They are not something you have to imagine. They're not something new. Just put the right thing, and Nigeria will solve. Thank you so much for the opportunity to
thank you very much,
contribute.
Mr. Gambo. I'm going to move to my brother and my friend, Orazulike, and then I would like Sontoye to round it up for us with our own, Ubuntu philosophy, to give this colloquium a very powerful meaning at the end of the day. But before that, let me state that this has been a very interesting and a very, intriguing moment for me to understand how we as a collective could address the issues of resource control, challenge our primordial loyalties, but most importantly, ask ourselves how we can leverage our strengths in nation building. On that note, Barrister Okachi, please give us 1 minute of your closing remarks. Thank you. Barrister Okachi, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I had a challenge on muting myself. Pardon me for introducing a different note on this in my closing remarks. All I was going to say is to echo what Prof said in the beginning. There is nothing we have said here that hasn't been said before. There is no idea we have sprouted here today that hasn't been sprouted before over and over again. But there is one constant, and that is the hope we all have that something will change without coming up with unique and different ideas about how that will happen. Madness is defined as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. There won't be a different outcome. The only thing we can do differently is to redefine the struggle of Nigeria, and which I am encouraging us all to go back and reflect on as not a struggle of North versus South, tribe versus tribe, religion versus religion, but the political class and their cohort of those seeking to get into that position and the rest of us. And if we recognize that, and we recognize that that social construct cannot change by itself and will not be changed by the beneficiaries, then we must logically accept that it is beholding on us to work to make that change. And the way we can make that change, like I said, is to avoid being in silos and working on these voices of one and power of one, but to reach across and unite and sensitize ourselves about the true reasons why things are this way, and sensitize others about some of those primordial sentiments, ethnic stereotypes, and instinctual aggregation against a common cause while otherizing others in Nigeria. It's an issue. Once we do that, the Nigeria we seek for will materialize. That's my humble belief. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Barrister Okachi. And finally, to my sister Soto here, how do we resensitize Nigerians with the Ubuntu philosophy? 1 minute.
So a quick story. Some months ago, there was a lady who came back from, I forget the country, to see her father who has returned to Nigeria. And she saw him in a terrible condition. To sensitize Nigerians, we really have to understand that we do not have any other country to call our own. And we need to make this work. We really do need to make this work. And so my ask for the celebrants and everyone on this call, you see that power of one that the speaker before me talked about? How many of those hundreds of, using his example, the KKK members can we meet? How many of them can we sensitize? When we go back home for the festivals, for the Christmases, for the celebrations, what should be the conversation? So for everyone on this call, we need to wear that hat of responsibility. The second thing I need to reiterate is that there is one organ of government, which I keep saying, that whether or whether those people are the kingmakers, INEC. how can we together drive a performance conversation with INEC? What amount of pressure can we apply? Because it doesn't matter if different leaders are selected in different places. Whatever is thrown up are the options we have. And then whatever INEC announces is what we get. So how can we move that lever? And until we realize that another man's home isn't ours, until we realize that this country is yours and is mine, that is the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are. Until we realize that this is home, then the needle will not move. So whilst Uche has called us, his clan members, tonight to a feast of ideas, the parting gifts, that party pack we're taking away, much more than the communique, is the call to action, the call to ownership, that Nigeria is ours to fight for, and it must work for every one of us. So every day, as we move, as we act, remember that what we do as individuals rubs off on another person. Therefore, we must always stand and remember that I am because we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sotoye, on that note. I don't think there is much more for me to add to it, because that was eloquently put. In light of that, in light of party gifts that you talked about, when we go to a party, just like the professor said earlier on, this is an unusual party for us for a 50th birthday. On that note, giving a party gift, I would like to call on the host, and of course, the birthday man of the moment, Mr. Orazulike Nnoli, for a parting gift and a vote of thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Nnoli. The mic is yours now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tew, and thank you, everybody. Professor Nnoli, my very dear uncle, and all the other panelists. They have competently dissected the issues and placed the matters that should bother our minds on the table. From the identifying the petit bourgeois class as the critical beneficiaries of a broken system in Nigeria, to the ethical question raised by Sotonye around the Ubuntu philosophy and the need for us to always have a look at the man in the mirror from the perspective of the community, to the paralysis of indigenous education system, which has greatly impeded the ability to develop indigenous technology and provide homegrown solutions to Nigeria's problems, to dealing with primordial tribalism, which was raised by Nicholas Okache, and also the need for constitutional consensus around the national questions as highlighted by Ken Henshaw, to Kate Palm's concerns over the definition of shared values and the need to leverage our diversity and build consensus on national identity. Sheyi Gambo also raised concerns about accountability for political office holders. And Sotonye, in her closing remarks, did make a call for political reforms, as this is the only way we can give vent to the power of the people to change the system. As we all know, nation building is work in progress. And like Prof pointed out in his opening statements, that the petit bourgeois who are the beneficiaries of this dysfunctional system are all of us in this room. Everybody who has logged into this conversation belongs to that class. He made that point that it's not just about the political leaders, but also the bureaucrats and all those who support the broken system of which we are part, whether we are actively playing a part or we are passive in the system. So I also agree with Sotonye and Kate Palm that this is an ethical issue and we can only be resolved through continued conversations and reconstruction of value system among the elites of Nigeria in order to build a national consensus on the future of Nigeria over the next few decades. So I think that this colloquium has fulfilled its mission and achieved its objectives of setting the issues on ground and activating more interest in the issues bordering Nigeria and its development, considering the consequences of division and ethnic identity and politics in Nigeria. So I will be devoting a significant part of the next few decades working across my network and building more partnerships and urging all of us to do so, just like Sotonia has called us to action, to build greater consensus within the elite class and hopefully build a general consensus that will help to move Nigeria forward. So once again, I'm grateful to all those who have played a part, from the moderator to the keynote speaker to the 5 panelists and all my friends, associates, colleagues, family who have logged in to make this colloquium a success. I thank you all for sparing your time to be part of this. And I wish us a fantastic weekend ahead. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nnoli, for that, incredible vote of thanks. For me personally, this has been a memorable day. I look forward to being a part of, your birthday colloquium. I know this will come up again. I look forward of becoming part of it in the near future, probably maybe in your 70, 80, colloquium, conversations like this. Given your interest in a civil society, I know this is an unusual birthday to have. And I thank you once again for the opportunity to moderate it. Ladies and gentlemen, panelists, I truly appreciate your time. I thank you all for coming. Again, my name remains Theo Sawe. I'm here, your friend. And please feel free to reach me for questions or any concerns. I can channel it to the organizing committee for further deliberation. Thank you, everyone, and God bless. Bye-bye.